The protesters have been defending their camp all night. I think there were fierce clashes between 4 and 6 a.m. local time. That's calmed down a bit now. The protesters have basically set up a fire which crosses diagonally the whole square and protects more than half of their camp, including the stage. So at the same time, their headquarters in the trades union building is still on fire, but it's a ruin already, you can say. The protesters are behind these lines of fire that are protecting them from the police. They're also standing there in the front line with their makeshift shields, and people are constantly bringing more material for the fire, wood and also tyres. Meanwhile, also protesters are cutting up the pavement. They've already cut up a lot of the pavement of Independence Square, and they're hacking away at it with axes. A lot of middle-aged women involved in this, hacking away at the pavement with axes to provide cobblestones for the protesters to throw at the police. They seem pretty determined to stay here and to fight the police, but at the same time it is striking how few people there are here. There are a few thousand people, despite the fact that people from the stage, political leaders and priests and other prominent figures in this opposition movement have been calling on Kiev residents to rise up and to come join the movement, to come down to Independence Square. That hasn't happened. Whether it's because they've lost support for the movement after it turned violent, or because they're afraid, or because it's simply not very easy to get to the centre of Kiev now that the government has shut down the metro and various major routes leading into the city centre. Well, I'm sure it's a mixture of all of those three things, but in what proportion, I'm not sure.
It does sound from what you're saying, Gulliver, though, that the people who are there have very little intention of leaving.
Absolutely. Well, that's what they're saying, and you've got to remember that these people have been protesting for nearly 3 months. A lot of them have been camping out on or around Independence Square for all of that time and enduring extremely low temperatures. It's also important to remember that they fear that if Mr. Yanukovych is allowed to remain in power, then Ukraine will become a sort of vassal state of Russia, and there won't be democracy. And what that means for them personally, having been guilty in the eyes of the regime of participating in what the regime calls mass disturbances or even terrorism, they could be very liable to legal action against them. And that is a very genuine fear among the protesters. I think a lot of people involved in the forefront of this movement feel quite simply that there's no going back because the alternative for them is jail.